Well, let's shift focus back to the war in Gaza. Well, it's nearly a month into the Israel-Hamas war. With this, Israel has announced the complete encirclement of the Gaza city as it intensifies its ground offensive. The fears of the war spilling over are fast becoming a reality as tensions are escalating on all fronts. First, let's look at the latest developments. The U.S. Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, has arrived in Israel. This is his third visit since the war began. He will also be visiting Jordan as part of his fresh West Asia tour. Blinken says he will discuss in Israel concrete steps to minimize civilian casualties in Gaza. Now, moving to the Israel ground offensive, Israel has announced that it has encircled Gaza's main city, Gaza City, and in the north of Gaza Strip, which has been the focus of the Israeli attacks as part of a ground offensive that vows to annihilate the Hamas militant group altogether. And Israel's military chief has said that Israeli soldiers have been operating in the Gaza city for the past few days and encircling it from several directions. The Israel Defense Forces released several videos in the last 24 hours that show their combat activity in Gaza. The IDF reported that over 130 terrorists have been thwarted in the past 24 hours and that the troops have struck terrorist infrastructure and destroyed large numbers of weapons. The army says that the concept of a ceasefire is not currently on the table at all. As Israel encircles Gaza City, Hamas's military wing has threatened in an audio address that Gaza would be a curse for Israel and has warned that its invading soldiers would go home, quote unquote, in black bags. Meanwhile, a major escalation has also taken place at Israel's northern border with Lebanon. The Lebanon-based militant group, the Hezbollah, has said that it has attacked 19 Israeli positions along the border simultaneously on Thursday, while the military wing of the Hamas has said it has fired 12 rockets from Lebanon towards the northern Israeli town of Kiryat Shimona. These visuals on your screens are from the northern Israeli town and show the scope of the destruction. And the IDF has also released footage that shows it striking targets in southern Lebanon in retaliation to the militant fire. The military says warplanes and helicopters have attacked targets belonging to the Hezbollah, including military headquarters, rocket launching positions and munition warehouses. The latest escalation on the border comes ahead of the scheduled speech of the Hezbollah chief later today. Meanwhile, the U.S. National Security spokesperson says there is no indication Hezbollah is ready to go on full force. And as per reports, the U.S. has also said that it has intelligence showing Russia's Wagner group may send air defense systems to Hezbollah. The system in question is the SA-22, which uses anti-aircraft missiles and air defense guns to intercept aircrafts. Washington hasn't confirmed that the system has been sent, but it is monitoring discussions involving the Wagner and Hezbollah as per officials. Meanwhile, in Gaza, Israeli strikes have hit another refugee camp. At least 15 people have been reportedly killed after the Israeli strike hit a residential building in the refugee camp in central Gaza. And Hamas has also released a video that claims to show the attack on Israeli tanks in Gaza. The video shows a man creeping up on the side of the tank and placing an apparent explosive device on it. Meanwhile, clashes have also erupted in the West Bank since the war began. Videos have emerged showing the latest incidents of violence. 2 Palestinians are reportedly killed in the Israeli strikes in the city of Jenin. The visuals on your screens have been taken from the Israeli strikes. However, we cannot at the moment verify this footage. And now we're being joined by Professor David Dunn, who is Professor of International Politics, University of Birmingham, live on the broadcast. And Dr. Dunn, thanks very much, Professor Dunn, for joining us on the show this afternoon. What are your expectations from the U.S. Secretary of State, Antony Blinken's third visit to West Asia? What can America achieve?
Well, he's clearly very keen to establish a series of pauses, not a ceasefire, but a series of pauses in the Israeli military operations to allow the evacuation of the wounded and other civilians, and also to allow humanitarian aid to cross the southern border. But he's also there to be seen to be there. It's important in American domestic politics. It's also important in the way in which American allies in the Middle East view things, that the American Secretary of State has to be seen to go the extra mile, to go to Israel and to press them for these pauses. But I expect also that he will be, when he goes to Jordan, he will be asking there whether there's anything they can do to take perhaps refugees from Gaza to allow them to evacuate a space that is clearly unsafe.
Right, Professor Dunn, but many believe that there is a duality in America's approach to the war. On the one side, they are sending weapons. They've also, the House of Representatives has also passed a bill to sanction more money to Israel in this war. Does Israel really need more money and more weapons to fight the Hamas in terms of the ratio and proportion of defense heft that the two sides have? Clearly, Israel's weapons outweigh that of Hamas, and also the fact that they're asking for pauses. Yet, the approach seems to be to support Israel in this fight in Gaza, whether it's the airstrikes or the rest of it.
So you're right in saying that this is an unequal fight in terms of the military capability on both sides. But there's two things to say on that. One is that the rate at which Israel is using bombs to drop them on Gaza, it will exhaust its supplies fairly quickly. But also, and importantly, America is giving defensive weapons, anti-aircraft weapons, anti-missile systems to Israel in order to try and deter the potential threat from Hezbollah in Lebanon, firing thousands of missiles that they have at Israel, or being able to defend against them if they do so. In terms of the line that America is following, it's a line which actually is also followed by the EU and by the UK and other parties, that Israel has a right to defend itself against the threat from Hamas. Hamas, of course, has repeated that their intention is to destroy Israel, to kill Jews, and to repeat the events of October 7th at every opportunity they get. Faced with that, Israel feels the need to try and eliminate Hamas, and the international community, by and large, is supportive of that right of self-defense. But of course, the international community is also calling for constraint, and that Israel does this in line with international humanitarian law and minimize the impact of civilians. That's the difficult thing to do, of course,
right.
How you actually operate in that space and achieve those objectives.
Right. But Professor Dunn, the domestic appetite for this war in America seems to be very low. We saw that in the congressional, hearings of Secretary Blinken himself, where there were protests, just behind him, whether it was also President Biden, who was also heckled at one of the events that he was at. So clearly that's one position, as America goes into this visit, the third visit by the Secretary of State. And also, do you worry that there could be a regional flare-up? As you yourself said, there's the Hezbollah, there are the Iraqi proxies, there's Syria, preparing for the war, many believe. So multiple fronts are opening up in this war as well.
So, yeah, two things. The domestic politics, this is a problem for the Biden administration. A lot of young Americans, a lot of young Democratic voting Americans are very critical of what Israel is doing, the way it is pursuing this war, and the huge number of civilian casualties that have been inflicted by the Israeli military action. So that is a problem for Biden, it's a problem for America, and it partly explains why I say that Blinken feels a need to be seen, to be actually coming here and pressing the Israeli forces for restraint. The other point of him being here, Blinken that is, in the region, is that there remains that risk of escalation. The speculation that Blinken would go to Turkey. If he went to Turkey, why would he be going there? Possibly to actually ask the Turkish government for permission to use the big American air bases there to attack Lebanon if the war should escalate and Lebanon starts to fire the hundreds of thousands of missiles that they have pointed to Israel in that direction. So there are concerns that this can escalate, and the American diplomacy is first and foremost focused on trying to keep the operation contained, while at the same time to actually be seen to be trying to get the Israelis to allow at least pauses in the military action.
Right. David Dunn, Professor of International Politics, University of Birmingham, thanks very much indeed for joining us and sharing your thoughts this afternoon.
Pleasure.